Welcome back to another episode of Norse Studies with Zakk. We're going over the culture of the Teutons. If you haven't watched any of my episodes, they're in 10-minute intervals. We're just reading this together. Feel free to start at any episode that you've missed. Go back through my page. You can catch up with us. It's pretty easy. We're just going to go through this book together, kind of discern what Wilhelm Grönbeck is trying to say about Norse culture. Now this is Eagle talking right here. Little chance is here to reach forth Odin's stolen goods. Heavy they are to drag from their hiding of sorrow. Thus it is for one who mourns. Eagle applies the parallel of Odin, who with great pains brought the poet's cup, the mead of inspiration, from the giant's cave, to himself in his struggle to force a way to expression through the walls of his own sorrow. Alright, Eagle's talking again right here. The sea roars down there before the door where my kinsman Hellship is laid. And he says Hellship as in hell, Helheim. My race bends to its fall, as the storm-lashed trees of the forested. Cruel was the hole the waves tore in my father's kin fence. Unfilled, I know, and open stands the sun-breach torn in me by the sea. Much hath Ran is the queen of the sea. Much hath Ran stolen from me. I stand poor in love, friends. The sea hath sundered the bonds of my race, torn a close twisted string out of myself. I say to you, could I pursue my cause with the sword? There should be an end of the ale-maker, which is the king of the sea, Aegir. If I could, I would give battle to that loose wench of Aegir's. But I felt that I had no power to take action against my son's bane. All the world sees emptiness behind the old man where he strides along. Much the sea hath stolen from me. Bitter it is to count up the fall of kinsmen, since he that stood, a shield among the race, turned aside from life on the soul ways. I know it myself. In my son grew no ill promise of a man. So, I know it myself. In my son grew no ill promise of a man. What Eagle is saying is that his son, he thinks his son was definitely going to be a good man. Ever he maintained that which his father had said, I, though all the people thought otherwise, he held me upright in the home, and mightily increased my strength. My brotherless plight is often in my mind. When the battle grows, I take thought, peer about, and think what other man stands by my side with courage for a daring deed, such as I need often enough. I am grown cautious of flight now, that friends are fewer. These are words that of their great simplicity can be repeated on all times, or at least as long as life is still a struggle. And it would be hard to find higher praise for such a poem. The following verses consist, as far as we are yet able to understand them, of variations, and these fundamental thoughts no one can be relied on, for men nowadays lower themselves and are glad to accept payment instead of revenge for the blood of brothers. So what does that mean? No one can be relied on, for men nowadays lower themselves and are glad to accept payment instead of revenge for the blood of brothers. So, nowadays, our laws have changed. And they've changed because of culture. So, somebody comes and they kill my brother. Before, I would go along with friends and kinsmen and avenge him. I would kill somebody that either killed him or somebody equivalent that would repay that blood that was lost. It was essentially an eye for an eye type of deal. So no one can be relied on. For men nowadays lower themselves and are glad to accept payment instead of revenge for the blood of brothers. So we're accepting some form of payment. He's not saying money or cash or anything like that. He's saying we're accepting some sort of payment. It's similar to the laws we have now. Criminal justice in the United States is, the goal of criminal justice is to try and make the victims of a crime whole again. But what Wilhelm is saying is that you can't trust anybody because they're accepting these sort of payments. You know, in that culture, it's totally different. You'd have to go get, they'd have to pay in blood. He who has lost a son must beget another. None else can replace the lost scion. My head is drooping, since he, the second of my sons, fell beneath the brand of sickness. He whose fame was unsmirched. I trusted in the God, but he was false to his friendship to me, and I have little heart now to worship him. In spite of his bitterness, however, he cannot but remember that he has himself the art of the poet, and a mind able to reveal the, page 16, plans of enemies, and he cannot forget that his mastery of words, the comfort of many ills, is a gift from the God who has betrayed him. Darkly he looks towards the future. I am strongly beset. Death stands on the cape, but blithely. Unruffled by fear, I will wait for hell. And hell is not the Christian hell with two L's. Hell is H-E-L, Helheim, where most people believe that they will go in the afterlife. The first part of the poem is properly independent of time. The reader has no need to look into a distant age and distant culture in order to understand it. It is the form, and that only, which binds it to eagle and skaldic poetry, and the exegesis of the learned. Even eagle's passionate outburst against the high powers that have usurped the mastery of the world hardly appears us as strange. On the contrary, we might perhaps approve the words as thoroughly human, and even award them honorable mention as being modern in spirit. Our weakness for all that savors of titanic defiance, however, must not blind us to the peculiar form of expression in which it is voiced by Eagle. His verses do not express the instinctive defiance of fate, but an earnest longing for vengeance and restitution. He is lamenting that he is unable to pursue his cause, or in other words, uphold his right. Is it really to be understood that Eagle only relinquishes plans of revenge because he stands alone in the world, without followers or kin? If one lacks in oneself the courage to take arms against a god, can it mend matters greatly to march up with a few staunch friends and kinsmen at one's back? So we may, or we must, ask, and in the asking of this question, our sympathy gives place to a vague poetic feeling that is equivalent to giving up all attempt to understanding. Sorrow can always drive a man to such extremes of his being that his words run into apparent contradictions, but the inconsistency of passion never sets meaning at defiance. It has its explanation in the fact that the opposites have their point of intersection somewhere in the soul. At times, the feelings are exalted to such a degree that they appear irreconcilable, but the sympathetic listener feels he has no right of criticism until he has followed the lines to their meeting point. In Eagle, the cohesion between the apparent contradictions is no doubt very firm. There is an inner contact between defiance of the gods and the outburst of helplessness at sight of one's solitary plight. But we can ponder and speculate as much as we please. A true understanding of Eagle's thought here, that he would feel himself master of death if he had a strong circle of kinsmen about him, is not to be won by mere study of these lines. We cannot get at it unless Eagle himself and the men of his time give us the real solution. Eagle appears to regard life in the light of a process at law, where the man with a strong circle of kinsmen wins his case, because he is backed by a crowd of men ready to swear on his side, and whose oaths carry weight enough to crush his opponent. So what is he saying? Wilhelm is saying that Eagle is in despair not because he doesn't have any kinsmen. It's not like he had a whole bunch, if he gets a whole bunch of men behind him and he's going to be fine. Essentially, he's saying that those kinsmen carry power. He doesn't have the power to convince other people of what he's trying to convince them of. I'm going to stop right there. If you guys want to get something else out of these videos, if you want them to be longer, if you want them to be shorter, please comment below. Rate, comment, subscribe. It helps me out. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.